What is going on, everybody? Shwazy here, and in today's video we're going to discuss everything you need to know about the newly facelifted 2023 Kia Telluride. We're going to go over the exterior, interior, talk about some of the safety features and the practicality, and then we'll answer the big question, which is why exactly is this one of the hottest three-row crossovers on the market today? Well, we got a lot to discuss, so let's get started. All right, so this is of course the Kia Telluride. Now, before we jump into the facelift for the 2023 model year, I briefly want to talk about the model. So the Telluride was actually released in 2016 as a concept and then officially released as a production vehicle in 2019 as a 2020 model year. And this thing has been selling like crazy, especially during the pandemic. You know, dealers were charging markups for this vehicle and, you know, Kia couldn't keep this on dealership lots. That's how popular it was. And I'm sure as you drive around today after watching this video, you'll probably see a half a dozen of these just within a quarter mile of your house. But in 2023, they decided to facelift this vehicle for, I don't even know what reason in particular, because it was already selling really well, but they want to stay on top of it. They want to make sure they don't fall behind. And that is what we're going to be reviewing in today's video. Now, let's talk about the facelift. The front grille, as you may be able to tell, has been restyled a little bit. Now, the Kia logo has changed. That's something they've been introducing in some of their newer models. And this is the tiger nose grille, and it's just a little bit more accented than the current outgoing 2022 model year. And then take a look at the headlights. These have been changed as well, as I'm sure you can tell. The previous version had this amber or white LED light that was kind of like a rectangular square on the headlights, and these no longer have that. Now, I personally miss that amber lighting because that was kind of a trademark of the Telluride, and you no longer have that. You just have your daytime running lights now, which still look really good. I'm going to turn on the headlights over here. You know, you can see they still look nice, but they just don't have that same trademark as the current 2022 model year. But that's just a personal opinion. But one thing to mention about the headlights, you do now get LED headlights as standard regardless of which trim level you pick. Coming down here, the bumper has been revised as well. You do have fog lights down here. I do like the use of this kind of fake looking aluminum color, the same that's on the grille. I think overall this is a very stately looking front end to the Telluride, and the 2023 model year is no different for that. Now, coming over to the side profile hasn't really changed for this vehicle. And again, it didn't really need to. You do have a nice body line that runs all the way across. It's a pretty subtle line, and then it kind of attaches the headlights to the taillights. You do have this aluminum bezel or fake aluminum down here at the bottom, kind of like a kick plate. And then, you know, you do have the body painted door handles, and then you do have a roof rack as well. This is kind of likened to being an affordable Range Rover, and I can see why. It's kind of got that boxier look to it. It's not the smooth, sweeping look that you get of a lot of crossovers. This kind of looks more, you know, off-roady, and in particular this one is because this is the X Pro package on top of the SX Prestige, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But the X Pro package and the X line is actually a new trim level for 2023, and it kind of adds some, you know, additional body cladding. It actually adds a little bit of ground clearance, and we'll discuss that in a minute as well. And it changes up these tires. These are actually all-terrain tires on the X Pro, and these are Continental terrain contact tires, and you're looking at a size of 245/60 R18. So these are 18-inch tires, and you can get up to 20 inches on the Telluride. And coming over to the side, you do have kind of that blacked out trim on the side. Looks really good. Coming over to the back, again, you have a little bit more of that body cladding around the tire wheel well. And then coming to the back, this is where they've also revised a couple things. For one, the taillight design has changed a little bit, and if you choose the EX trim level or above, you do get LED taillights now as well. And then down here you have that same kind of look to the rear bumper as the front bumper with that fake looking aluminum with your parking sensors. And then your reverse light is also over here on the left and right side. And then you do have just a 2-outlet exhaust port. Overall, still a very good looking rear end. And then I do want to talk about the length of this vehicle if you guys aren't familiar. So the length from bumper to bumper is about 197 inches. Now that's a little bit shorter than the 199-inch Ford Explorer and a lot shorter than the 206-inch Chevy Traverse that I reviewed about a year ago, but it's about the same size as the Highlander and the Pilot, and this is a three-row crossover as standard. So no matter what trim level you get seating for up to 8. This particular one, being the SX Prestige, actually has captain's chairs, and so this has seating for 7. Now, in case you're wondering about the color, this is actually called Midnight Lake Blue, and it doesn't have much of a metallic spec to it, but it does look really good. Kind of matches the ruggedness of the exterior, but you can get up to 9 different exterior colors on the Telluride. Okay, now let's talk about what's under the hood of the Telluride, because it's actually the same powertrain that was used before the facelift, and it's a 3.8 liter direct injection V6 that produces about 291 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. Now, all of that power is sent through a Hyundai and Kia designed 8-speed automatic transmission, and this thing will do 0 to 60 in just about the mid 7-second range. Now, in case you're wondering, you can get this in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive like this particular vehicle behind me, and with the X Pro you do get standard all-wheel drive. Now, the fuel economy for this particular version is 18 in the city, 24 on the highway for a combined 21, which is pretty decent for a 3-row crossover. Okay, now jumping to the back, we're going to talk about towing. So the standard Telluride comes with a 5,000 pound capacity. Now, if you choose this X Pro, it actually bumps it up by about 500 pounds because it also includes heavy duty cooling. Now, compared to the competition, 5,500 pounds is a pretty good towing capacity. A lot of them are just around 5,000. The only one that I think is a class leader is the Nissan Pathfinder. I think that one pushes about 6,000 pounds in towing capacity. Okay, now let's jump inside and talk about the interior. Now, as much as I love the exterior look, it actually looks very luxurious and premium. I think the interior is the reason this vehicle sells so well, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, as you approach the vehicle, I do like how the side view mirrors actually open up. It just kind of adds that luxurious feeling inside the cabin. And jumping inside, before we talk about all of the tech, I do want to talk about the materials and just the styling. Starting off with the door panel, you do have soft touch material all throughout the top, which is really nice to see. You can easily rest your elbow here and not feel tired after like a long road trip. Moving down, you do have some fake looking wood. And keep in mind, there's actually 14 different interior color options. So if you don't like the particular one I'm sitting in, you can get this in a variety of different options. Moving forward, you do have this nice aluminum door handle. You do have 2-person memory seats, and then moving down from there, I do like the terracotta interior of this particular vehicle. You have a soft touch material over here where you're resting your elbow. It's actually leather wrapped. You do have some nice aluminum trimmed window switches up here that look really nice. I will knock this vehicle for a little bit of hard touch plastic around the speaker area, but they have to cut costs somehow, and I do like that it's the same terracotta interior as the rest of the car. You do have a nice 10-speaker Harman Kardon sound system. We'll talk about what trim level comes with that, but it does sound really good. I'm a sucker for Harman Kardon. It's one of my favorite sound systems in any vehicle. And then further down from there, you do have a pretty okay sized storage compartment with a place for a bottle of water. Moving further in, you do have this air vent, which is surrounded by this nice fake aluminum and then a little bit more of that fake wood. Now, I say it's fake, but it really doesn't feel cheap or fake at all. I just know it is, but you know, this actually feels very premium. I don't think anybody sitting in this car and touching it is going to think this is, you know, fake plastic or anything like that. And to be honest, the interior gives me a lot of BMW-like vibes, especially with the color and the different type of materials. Down from the van, you do have some of your buttons to open up your tailgate. You do have your off-road cruise control, and then you have your tow modes and your brightness settings for the instrument gauge cluster. Further down, you do have your fuse box and your hood release. Now, moving towards the steering wheel, I think that they could have done probably a little bit of a better job with the steering wheel. It's just kind of uninteresting. It's just normal. I think Hyundai and Kia have some cooler steering wheels, especially the one in the Palisade that I reviewed last year. That one was really cool, but it doesn't look bad. It's just kind of normal and average. It does the job. Really nice leather wrap. You do have some small 10 and 2 notches. On the left hand of the steering wheel, you do have your voice activation and your buttons to control a lot of your audio, so you can change through AM, FM, your Bluetooth, and then adjust the volume and your seek and track settings. You also have the button to answer your phone call, and you have your favorites button, which you can pre-program with the instrument gauge cluster. On the right-hand side of the steering wheel, you have your buttons to control your instrument gauge cluster, your cruise control functionality, so your steering assist, your distance indicator, and to set the speed and turn it on and off. You also have these fake aluminum dials and switches to kind of circulate through the different menus. On the left side of the steering wheel, you have your headlight controls. On the right-hand side is just your windshield wipers. You do have automatic windshield wipers on here. That's becoming pretty standard. And then moving further above the dash, this is all actually soft soft touch material. It's kind of this injection molded plastic, but it's all wrapped in this, you know, leatherish, fake leather material. I really am impressed with this because even some higher end luxury cars end up skimping up back here because nobody's actually touching the surface. Whereas here, everything here is soft touch. You even have this fake stitching over here on the passenger side. Really impressed with the material quality in here. It's really just above and beyond. Going further up, you do have your 10-inch head-up display, which is actually pretty robust. It will tell you what cars are around you. It shows little blocks on the head-up display showing you if there's something, you know, to the right or left of you, in front of you, and it'll even tell you if there's something in your blind spot without you having to take your eyes off the road and look at the blind spot indicator. And then it will also show your typical navigation system settings. Now, coming further down, this is where I want to talk about, which is these dual 12.3-inch screens. Now, this is kind of the main update to the facelift of the interior, because before there were two different screens. You had your regular instrument gauge cluster, and I think it was part digital, part analog. And then the infotainment screen was its own separate housing, and now it's kind of wrapped into one large screen. I think it's like 25 inches of screen real estate, but they are two separate screens. It's actually reminiscent a lot of like BMWs or Mercedes, and it's a curved screen. That's really impressive. But you do have a 12.3-inch gauge cluster that comes on the higher trim levels. We'll talk about which ones. And it looks really nice. The graphics are fantastic. Now, it doesn't have much customization. It's very similar to like your analog with digital display where you can cycle through, you know, your fuel economy, your odometer, your navigation, but it doesn't allow you to customize that much. I mean, even switching into different driving modes, the most it will do is if you put it in sport mode, a part of the tachometer will turn red. But other than that, there's not like any cool graphics going on when you're changing driving modes. I wish they did, but again, they have to cut costs somehow, and it's fantastic that they are even offering this on a 3-row crossover. Now, moving towards the infotainment screen, it's a really, really nice software, very easy to use. You have a really cool looking home menu that just kind of gives you a simplified look to what's going on, what's playing on the radio, and your current navigation. Then you can easily swipe through various different settings. There's really just two menus, and there's just a bunch of applications similar to like your Android or iPhone device, and it's one of the best in the industry. I really like the one the GM offers, but I gotta say this one is just as good, if not better, because it's a larger screen. Very, very intuitive. There's no delay, there's no lag. It's very easy to pull things up, and there's some cool features in here that I want to talk about. Like one of the ones I've talked about in the Kia Carnival I reviewed, which pretty much has the exact same software, is something called passenger talk. So by pushing the button, you can actually talk to the passengers in the third row without, you know, having to scream at them all across the second row. So this is me talking normally as if I'm trying to address the passengers in the third row seats. Okay, now this is me talking normally, trying to address the individuals in the third row seats. Let me know how you guys hear this. Maybe it's a little bit louder, maybe not, but it's kind of a cool feature overall. You also have something called quiet mode, where let's say your kids are sleeping in the second or third row, but you still want to listen to your AC/DC. Well, what you can do is you can turn on quiet mode, and then it will only play the sound through the front two speakers and leave the rear speakers off. You also have a really advanced 360-degree camera. By pushing the button over here on the center stack, you actually pull up not just your typical bird's eye view 360 camera, but you'll also have something that I've seen only on, you know, luxury German brands, which is a 3D 360-degree camera where you can swipe around the car almost as if a drone is flying around your vehicle, showing you everything that's going on. It's really impressive how you can see almost down the street because it uses the outboard cameras in this vehicle to give you that cool perspective and some really fancy software to put it where you're actually looking at the car from the outside. Moving further down from the infotainment screen, you do have 3 vents, really nice, you know, solid feel to them. And then you have a line that runs all the way across to the passenger side. Below that, you have some really nice aluminum feeling buttons. So you do have physical buttons for your seek and track settings, and then some quick access buttons if you want to get to your radio or navigation system with just the push of a button. You do still have a physical volume and tune knob. That's something that's going away in a lot of vehicles. And then further down, you also have physical buttons for your climate control. So you have a heated steering wheel option. You also have a climate control in the back, and by pushing a button over here in the center stack, you can actually control the rear climate control, but they can do that back there as well, just using the controls on the roof. To the left of that, you do have a nice looking engine start stop button. Further down from the center stack, you do have two handles that extend on the left and right side, giving you kind of a Porsche-like vibe to the interior. And then on these two handles at the top, you have heated and ventilated seats. And I gotta say, the heated seats are pretty good, but the ventilated seats are even better. I was surprised how well they work. In the center stack, you have this little cover over here that if you push down, it will open up your wireless charging pad, which fits the latest phone. I have the Galaxy S22 Ultra, and it fits just fine in there. It charges great. And then you have a little compartment to the right of it. And then you do have your typical cigarette style outlet and your two USB ports. The one complaint I have about this lid, it takes a little bit of effort to open and close. So you can't be really soft with it. You kind of have to put some pressure to shut it and to open it, but it just takes some getting used to. Down here, you do have your regular physical shifter. That's a little bit different than the Hyundai Palisade, which has buttons. I do prefer having a physical shifter because you can actually rest your palm on here and manipulate the seek and track buttons on the center stack. Below that, you have your different drive modes. So you've actually got 5 different drive modes. You've got Smart, Sport Mode, Eco, Comfort, Snow, and then you do have a center locker. So essentially, it'll just equally distribute the front and rear power. Now, further down from that, you do have your electronic parking brake, you have your auto start stop off button, your auto hold button, and then you have your parking sensor off button and your button for your 360-degree camera. On the right-hand side, you have a little storage compartment and 2 cup holders. And then over here in the center, a pretty nice padded center arm console. Opening this up, it's a pretty large compartment. You have a little bit of a tray in here that you can manipulate however you want. And then you do have a little USB charging port, but a pretty good amount of space, something you can put in here and hide. I could easily fit like a camcorder or something and not have any problems. Now let's talk about these seats, because I failed to mention how nice these are. So you do have power adjustable seats, that's pretty standard, but also for the driver's side, you do have a power adjustable thigh support, which is not something I see on a lot of vehicles. So for those of you with really long legs or long thighs, that's going to be really nice for longer road trips. Now you don't have any type of massage seat function. That's actually something that came on the Palisade, and for some reason they've kept a little bit more of some of those premium features for the Palisade and haven't carried them over to the Telluride. But I gotta say, you don't really need it. It's just a nice to have. They do look really nice though. I love the look of the perforated leather with the cross stitching. I mean, this is straight out of a luxury car. I don't think anybody looking at these seats would think otherwise. You do also have X Pro embossed into the top of the leather seats. That's obviously if you get the X Pro package. And overall, a really comfy headrest too. This is probably one of the softest I've experienced. It's almost like a pillow. Really, really comfortable seats. I've driven this for, a couple hundred miles and I haven't had any issues. Now, jumping into the second row, that's where it gets almost even better than the first row. So the door panel, again, really same soft touch materials. A lot of car manufacturers skimp out on the soft touch material on the door panels of the second row. This one doesn't have that. Everything is soft touch, and you've got a manual sunshade. Now, the SX Prestige actually offers second row heated and ventilated seats. So imagine that as a kid. You have ventilated seats in the second row. That's pretty amazing. And they work really well, just as good as the first row. Now, moving down from the heated and ventilated seat function is the storage compartment. Now, one thing that surprises me is this vehicle doesn't have that much storage space. Now, I reviewed a Chevy Traverse and I've reviewed some other 3-row crossovers, and I feel like some of those have a little bit more space in that door panel down at the bottom. I feel like you can fit a ton of stuff there. And this one is just, kind of an average size. It almost feels more similar to like a 2-row crossover than a 3-row crossover when it comes to door pocket storage, but not something you can't get used to. Just plan for that if you're looking at buying one. Now, moving inside, taking a look at the seats, same nice texture to them. You got the really beautiful stitching. The only thing that's missing is the X Pro embossing on the leather. And this particular vehicle has the captain's chair setup. So you only have seating for up to 7 individuals, but the captain's chairs just feel really nice. They have this adjustable armrest in the middle, and then they actually do recline a little bit, and they move forward and backwards. Now, at its most backward setting, you have class-leading legroom. You're looking at 42 inches of legroom in the second row with the seats pushed all the way back, and it's very, very comfortable, very spacious. Now, that doesn't leave much room for the third row, but we'll talk about that in just a second. You do have 2 cup holders in front of the center arm console, and then you also have your climate control settings on the roof. But if you take a look up at the roof, you'll notice there's actually a second sunroof above the second and third row. So unlike a lot of cars that have just a panoramic sunroof starting from the driver's side moving to the second row, this one has actually a separate sunroof for the first row passengers that actually opens, and then you have a second larger sunroof for the second and third row that doesn't open but gives you a nice beautiful view into the exterior. It's nice because third row passengers are usually a little bit skimped out on in terms of amenities, and this way they can actually still look out and see the beautiful exterior. You can cover up both sunroofs entirely if you're getting a little bit too much sunlight on the interior. Now, the last thing to mention is you do have two USB ports behind the driver and passenger seat, which is nice to plug in some devices for your second row passengers. Now, moving into third row is actually very easy in the Telluride. I think Kia and Hyundai do a fantastic job in making it easy to access the third row. You simply have to just push one button on the seat of the second row and the entire unit will slide forward automatically, giving you a pretty easy access into the third row. And the other nice thing is the Telluride's doors are actually pretty massive. And so opening up the door, you get a really large opening to be able to get into the third row seat without having to do any type of gymnastics or yoga to get into that third row. And the third row, obviously the seats aren't as nice looking or as comfortable, but you do get about 31 inches of legroom back there. Now, that's not class leading. So the Pilot actually comes with about 32 inches. The Durango has about 34 and the Traverse has about 33. So give or take an inch or two, you're kind of around the same size as all the other three-row crossovers. And it's not a bad place to sit, to be honest. I had some friends sitting back there for just a little drive around the block. And, you know, it's probably not the best for adults for road trips, but for a short trip, it's totally fine. Or for like teenagers or kids, there's plenty of room back there. And you do have USB ports so you can charge some devices. Now, surprisingly, you don't have third row heated seats like you do in the Palisade. Again, another feature that they've reserved for Hyundai. But you do have some air vents above you, which is controlled by the same climate control unit above the second row. Now, one thing I'll complain about in the third row, which I complain about in every single three-row crossover or minivan, is the fact that you have hard touch plastics where you're resting your elbow. Now, maybe not a big deal for like kids or teenagers, but as an adult, if I'm sitting back there for a long time, I kind of don't want my elbow to be rubbing up against hard touch plastic the entire time. The nice thing here though is you can fit 3 people in the back. It's going to be really tight, but you do have 3-person seating back there. Now, moving to the trunk area, you do have an automatic open tailgate. It's called the smart tailgate, where if you walk up with your key and you stand there for a couple seconds, it'll actually automatically open. And then if you walk away with the key in your pocket, it will automatically close. You can shut that feature off in the infotainment screen, but it's nice to have, especially if your hands are full. In the back, there's not that much to talk about. Again, not the best amount of space, but not the least either. You're looking at about 21 cubic feet of space, which is actually more than the Honda Pilot, which has 19, or the Highlander, which only has 16, but it's less than the Traverse, which has 23. And then if you fold down the third row seats, which is actually really easy to do by pulling on the string, and the seat will essentially fall forward, you have upwards of 46 cubic feet of space behind the second row. Now, another nice touch back there is a button to be able to lower the second row seats. So if you really need to throw some cargo back there, you can push that button and the second row seats will automatically retract and fall down. That's a really nice touch. Although I was surprised, again, the Palisade came with a third row automatic folding seat. So you pushed a button and the third row would fold down. In this one, you have to do it by hand. Not a big deal, but it's kind of odd that the Palisade at a very similar price point had a few additional features. With the X Pro package, you do get a household power outlet back there. So if you happen to be, you know, tailgating or whatever, you can plug in some devices and play them outside of the vehicle. Okay, now to wrap up the interior, I want to talk about what each trim level gets you, because you do still get a lot of standard features, but you can also option for some pretty cool ones as well. Okay, the entry level trim level of the Telluride is called the LX, and it comes standard with this 12.3-inch touchscreen. So no matter which trim level you get this exact same screen. You also get a navigation system as standard as well, which is nice to have, and you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now, it's not wireless, unfortunately, but you do have that functionality. Now, one more feature you get as standard is this quiet mode, where it will turn off the rear speakers like I was talking about earlier. Unfortunately, you don't get this 12.3-inch instrument gauge cluster display as standard. The standard size is actually 4.2 inches. Now, in terms of seating, you don't get leather seats as standard, of course. It comes with something called Syntex, which is just a synthetic material, but you do get standard 3-row seating and seating for up to 8 individuals. Now, fortunately, every single Telluride comes with an independent rear climate control. Now, upgrading to the S trim level, which is just above the LX, gets you a wireless charging pad. You got heated seats, 20-inch wheels on the outside, and roof racks. Now, if you upgrade to the EX trim level or above, you'll get a sunroof above the driver and passenger side. You'll get a heated steering wheel. You'll also get leather seats with heated and ventilated functionality. In the second row, you'll get the rear sunshades for the second row passengers. And in the back, you'll have the smart tailgate with the automatic opening and closing. And on the outside, you'll get LED taillights. Now, above the EX is the SX. And honestly, I think that's kind of the sweet spot for keeping the price relatively low, but still getting a lot of cool features. Upgrading to the SX gets you the 12.3-inch instrument gauge cluster. It also gets you the 360-degree camera with this drone-like view so that you could see everything going on outside of the vehicle. You also get the blind spot camera feature, where if you turn on the left blinker, it'll turn on your left blind spot camera, and same with the right-hand side. Really nice feature when you're driving on the freeway. You also get the addition of ambient lighting with, I believe, 64 different types of color choices. Really nice on the interior. It's definitely not Mercedes level, but definitely better than a lot of the competitors in the same segment. You'll also get this amazing 10-speaker Harman Kardon sound system. You'll also get this dual sunroof option for the second row passengers. You'll get the passenger talk feature where you can talk to the passengers in the third row. You'll also get front parking sensors and the advanced safety system, which will actually change lanes on the freeway by just pushing on the blinker left or right. Now, above the SX is the SX Prestige, and that's actually what I'm sitting in today. It is the top of the line trim that comes with some pretty cool wow factors. Let's talk about those right now. First, the SX Prestige comes with this 10-inch head-up display. You also get this rear view camera mirror with the SX Prestige, and it works pretty well. You'll also get Nappa leather on the interior, and then you also get heated and ventilated second row seats. Next set of features is this premium headliner. Now, I don't know if this is actually Alcantara, but it does feel really soft. That's why they call it a premium headliner and not a suede headliner, but nonetheless, it is nice to touch. You also get rain sensing wipers on the SX Prestige and the 110 volt power outlet in the back, which is also an option that comes on the X Pro. So as I mentioned earlier, there are two additional packages you can get for 2023, and that is the X line and the X Pro. So what's included in the X line? It's kind of the light version of the X Pro, and that includes all-wheel drive as standard. You do get 20-inch wheels. You also get a self-leveling suspension. So when you're towing something pretty heavy, this vehicle will actually self-level the rear end to keep it, you know, from doing that Carolina squat that we all know about. Now, the X line is primarily an aesthetic package because you do get different roof rails. You've got different trim pieces on the side. So this kind of smoked out color I mentioned earlier is kind of a part of the X line or X Pro package. But you do also get increased ground clearance. So you're looking about 8.4 inches instead of 8 inches. So 0.4 inches taller than just your standard Telluride. Now, you can get the X line on the EX trim level, the SX, or the SX Prestige. Now, you can upgrade all the way to the X Pro, which is this particular vehicle in front of me, and it kind of just builds on what the X line already offers. Of course, you do get the same all-wheel drive system as standard, the self-leveling suspension for the rear end, and then, as I mentioned earlier, you get the increased towing capacity of 5,500 pounds because it has heavy-duty cooling. You also get a 110 volt power inverter in the back, so there's one in the trunk. And another big part of the X Pro trim level, aside from, you know, the same trim and molding you'll get with the X line, you'll also get these all-terrain tires. They're kind of a little bit more grippy, meant to, you know, allow you to go a little bit more off-road than just your typical Telluride. You still get the additional ground clearance at 8.4 inches, and you do have exclusive color options for the X Pro. Now, the X Pro package is not available on all trims. It's actually only on the SX and the SX Prestige. Now, unfortunately, with this 2023 facelift, the price tag has increased a little bit as well. The entry-level LX trim level now starts just shy of $36,000, where I think it was somewhere in the $33,000 range back in 2022. Now, if you choose this top-of-the-line SX Prestige with the X Pro package, that one's just shy of $53,000. Now, this particular vehicle behind me with destination and delivery and a few other additional packages, you're looking at just around $55,120. Now, in terms of reliability and warranty, Kia offers some of the best warranty in the industry. You're looking at a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, and then your typical 5-year, 60,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty. And honestly, Kia and Hyundai have consistently topped the charts in J.D. Power and Associates reliability reviews, and so I think they've come a long way from the vehicles of the late 90s and early 2000s. Okay, now let's get behind the wheel and take the Telluride for a drive. Now, before we do that, I quickly want to show you the new Kia key. This is kind of similar to what was seen on the Stinger. You've got this little Kia logo over here that actually lights up when you push the button. That's kind of cool. And then all of the buttons are actually on the side of the keys, but it's a nice material to it, kind of a rubberized key. It is quite chunky, like it's a pretty large key here, but Kia also offers something called the digital key, where you can actually use your phone to unlock the vehicle, and you can send like a one-time digital key to a family member or a friend to be able to use this car. So that's a cool feature, but let's jump inside and take it for a ride. Okay, setting off in the 2023 Kia Telluride. It does have the smart seat positioning where it'll actually move forward and back as you're entering and exiting the car. I apologize for the sunlight. It's not ideal conditions for filming a video, but we'll make do with what we have. Anyways, one of the first things you'll notice in this vehicle is honestly just how small it feels from the driver's seat. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a maneuverable way. You don't feel the size of this vehicle. It doesn't feel like a pretty much full-size 3-row crossover. It honestly feels kind of like a compact crossover. This thing is very maneuverable, very easy to park, and I've never had issues with that. Now, real quick, we're gonna accelerate here. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you do have a 3.8 liter V6 here with, 291 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque. And when I first heard about those stats, I was a little disappointed because, those numbers are fine for maybe like a 2-door or a 4-door sedan, but not necessarily for a 3-row crossover. And so I expected this vehicle to be a little sluggish. But in all honesty, I feel like those numbers are underrated because this car has plenty of pickup. I have never felt like it was underpowered or it's lacking. Now, in terms of ride quality, you may have noticed as we drove over some train tracks back there, it's really a comfortable ride. Honestly, I was surprised by it because I just came from driving a Mercedes GLE 63S, and that car actually drove a little bit rougher than this. But keep in mind, that's to be expected because that's an AMG vehicle with sport-tuned suspension, low-profile tires. This has some pretty beefy all-terrain tires, so it's not a direct comparison, but I will say this thing rides pretty smooth. Now, I did review a Chevy Traverse about a year ago, and I think the Chevy Traverse is just an extremely comfortable vehicle. I think Chevy does a fantastic job with the ride quality and the softness of the suspension. So maybe the Traverse is a little bit softer than this, but this is not rough by any means. This is a very comfortable ride. And also the interior sound insulation is really good. It's not ultra luxury car levels of good, but this is a perfectly well insulated vehicle. I think the higher trim levels do have an acoustic glass, and so you have a little bit more insulation. Now, this vehicle does come equipped with the automatic start-stop technology, and you can turn it off by pushing the button over here on the arm console, but it's not invasive. It actually does a really good job. It's pretty smooth. Here we are about to enter the freeway, and I'm actually going to put it into sport mode here. It's not bad. The acceleration is really good from like 0 to 30. This engine has a good amount of low-end torque, which is what you want when you're driving in day-to-day traffic, trying to pass somebody. And of course, we're lined up with a bunch of cars here where I can't actually open this vehicle up. But in sport mode, what I do like is it holds the revs up pretty high, so it gives you that torque when you need it or when you want it. The other part of this engine that I like is it's pretty torquey when you're accelerating in day-to-day traffic. So I'm talking 0 to 30 miles an hour. There's plenty of low-end get-up to get you up to a speed limit without any problems. Typical to other naturally aspirated engines, I feel like, without having a turbocharger, you're going to have a little bit of less power when you're going from like 30 to 60 miles an hour. That's where this engine probably struggles a little bit. And that's where, having a turbocharger would help. But at the same time, with a turbocharger, you wouldn't have that low-end torque that you do on this vehicle when you're, just accelerating in day-to-day traffic. But I think this engine is fantastic for a vehicle of this size. Now, do I wish they had a more powerful version? Yes, of course. I mean, I'm a muscle car fanatic. Of course I want more power. But also from the fact that, there are some competitors out there in this same space that have more power. You know, I recently reviewed the Ford Explorer ST, and that was a fun car to drive. If you guys haven't seen the review, check it out. I'm going to try to throw it up on the screen, but that was a fun vehicle to drive because you had a lot of power, a lot of horsepower, and you also have the Dodge Durango RT and the SRT, but you know, that's another competitor in the three-row crossover space. And so I think Kia would actually do really well with putting in a more powerful powertrain under the hood to compete with the Explorer and the Durango. And you know, they could easily charge $60,000 because that's kind of how the other competition is pricing themselves. You know, I think it's a win-win for Kia and for the consumer if they're really wanting to have a pretty powerful SUV without having to pay AMG type prices for those vehicles. Maybe something with around 400 horsepower. I think that's like the sweet spot, and that's something that's missing from the Telluride segment. Now let's talk about the safety tech here because it's really advanced. I mean, like I said, I just recently came from the GLE 63S, and this has almost the same level of safety tech as that vehicle, and that one was more than double the price. So by turning on the adaptive cruise control, which actually is standard on all vehicles, all Tellurides come with the stop and go technology where, you know, it can actually come to a complete stop and restart the vehicle. So once you turn that on with the steering wheel and you set the cruise control, so I set it to, let's do 70 miles an hour, then I can turn on the steering assist button, and this vehicle will now be able to keep the vehicle in between the lanes. Now that's another feature that's standard on all Tellurides. You have lane keep assist and lane centering. And then if you choose the SX trim level or above, you can get something called lane change assist. But essentially what it can do is similar to what I reviewed in the GLE 63. Once this vehicle figures out the lanes, it can actually change lanes for you. And honestly, it does it pretty seamlessly. And Kia is really going above and beyond with their safety technology. I mean, this is kind of next level. This is what you would expect from a car double the price point of the Telluride. Okay, so now the gauge cluster is showing me that it can actually change lanes for me. So letting go of the steering wheel, this vehicle just changed lanes. Now, it does say I have to hold on to the steering wheel, but nonetheless, it did that all by itself. Okay, so to sum up this video, let's talk about my overall thoughts, and let's answer the question as to why this is one of the hottest three-row crossovers on the market today. And I think the answer to that is this is a bargain SUV. Now, $55,000 is a lot of money for this top-of-the-line SX Prestige with the X Pro package, but you can get them cheaper for around $35,000. But even at $55,000, this thing rivals a lot of the luxury car makers. I mean, to look at that interior and not say that that is near luxury level would be an absolute lie. In addition, your technology is really advanced. I mean, you've got some of the best safety tech in the industry. This thing will change lanes for you. You've also got dual 12.3-inch displays. And so the amount of features and amenities and the build quality that you get in this vehicle rivals a lot of the much more expensive vehicles. Now, is anybody really mistaking this for a Mercedes or a BMW? No, to be honest, probably not. But that's not the point of this car. The point is that you get a lot of those cool touches that you get with luxury cars, like a beautiful interior and exterior. I mean, this thing does look really good from the outside, but you get it at a much lower price, and so you get to enjoy some of those things without breaking the bank. The best way I can describe this vehicle is this is what Mercedes and BMW was maybe 5 years ago. I'm talking, you know, the previous generation of the GLE or the X5. You know, this is kind of what it was on the inside, except this one has probably much better tech than a 5-year-old Mercedes or BMW. Now, there are some things inside that could be a little bit better, you know, if you're comparing it to a Mercedes or a BMW, but it's just crazy that I'm even comparing it to those vehicles because this doesn't compete against those. And so that is why this and its cousin vehicle, the Hyundai Palisade, have been such hot sellers, as you really get so much bang for your buck. But let me know what you guys think about the Kia Telluride. Now, would you pick this over some of the competition like a Nissan Pathfinder, Chevy Traverse? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if this is your first time stopping by, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly videos. Also, check me out on all the social media at Shwazy_. As always, everybody, I hope you stay Shwazy, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.